talk about some of the outside noise that is happening around this team. And I've got three pieces that I want to share with you. We'll go one by one. We'll first start with Manti Te'o, and then we'll get to Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk and the thoughts that are being shared about those two from Steve Young and Josina Anderson. But Manti Te'o said that he feels like the 49ers look emotionally drained and compared them to one of his old teams that lost heartbreakers back to back in the playoffs in the New Orleans Saints. And he just said that the 49ers, they've climbed the mountain multiple times, but they don't seem to have the same swagger that you are used to them seeing. Now, again, the easy thing to do is to make fun of Manti Te'o because he got catfish and da, 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 da. I've seen that all over the internet. But I want to have a real conversation because Manti Te'o was a football player. Manti Te'o was on a team that was emotionally drained, and he's calling out what it is that he sees from the San Francisco 49ers. Any thoughts on this? Do you agree, disagree? Overall, what do you think? Last Second Sports is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Link is in the description. Promo code LSS. First-time depositors using my link will receive a special pick plus up to $250 in bonus cash. Don't miss out. Click the link today. Thank you, Underdog, for being a sponsor. Now back to the video.
I mean, in theory, I think more than... So I think the climbing up the hill and not getting there, I don't really see that as what's draining this team because, I think a lot of these players are hungry because of that. I think where the sentiment could be realized is this offseason with Trent not being there, with Ayuk not being there. To me, I think that's the thing that's probably the most annoying for this team. Most annoying in this offseason is like you don't have this full confidence who's next to you and who you're going to be fighting with to reach that ultimate goal, right? I think this has been a really draining offseason. And an off season where you didn't expect it to be this way, right? Like, oops, sorry. You don't expect it to be. You didn't expect 13 days away from week 1. You don't know who your left tackle is, and you don't know who wide receiver 1 is, right? So I think that isn't the ideal situation to be in when you're vying for a Super Bowl. So, yeah, I think that would be more draining. I think it was great to see Diamador Lenore, who has overtaken everybody as my favorite 49er now, Jesse, is Diamador Lenore. Just the way he claps back and the way he has his team's back in all phases. So, to me, the way he clapped back was great because I think that's a big sign to show that at least the players might not be feeling it. You know what I mean? Like, we might be feeling it as a fan base. On paper, it would seem that potentially that could be the case, but Diamador Lenore is Mr. Swagger, and he's coming back and like, nah, that's not the case. When you hear Brock Purdy talk, it doesn't seem like that's the case. When you hear Debo talk, it doesn't seem like that's the case. So, like, to me, I think that maybe there's a difference between what the players actually feel and what we might be thinking. But I don't think it's unfair criticism from Manti Te'o to think that potentially could be a thing, because it could. It could absolutely, not so much they keep getting close and not making it, but more just the turmoil that this offseason has been.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I agree with him to a certain extent, and only because I was there, and it was something that I noticed right away. Last year, this team during practice had so much swagger. I mean, every single day. You knew this team was ready to go chase a Super Bowl. And then, of course, they carried themselves out in the regular season, and they started out phenomenally. And there was just a feeling with this team very, very early on in those practices. This year, that feeling wasn't there. And I talked about it with Coach at nauseum. I feel like when we were at training camp, just how flat it felt compared to last year. And so Matt Mayoko's come out and said it. I've heard Larry say it. And now, Manti Te'o is pointing it out. it may not be the end of the world, and it may absolutely be, and fairly, because you are missing two of the best players on this team. Two leaders, by the way. They're not just good players, but they're leaders as well. Brandon Ayuk is a tone setter in practices. He's a tone setter. Trent Williams is a tone setter in games. I mean, talk about a guy who's willing to scrap at any time. I mean, that's Trent Williams. So without those guys, it could feel that way. And I think it could be as simple as if you get them back, you feel great about it. But definitely there is something there. I don't think Manti Te'o's off his rocker at all. And it is an interesting contrast in how this team is being discussed by guys like Manti Te'o, by guys like Julian Edelman, who are not a part of this organization. It's in stark contrast to the way that this team used to be discussed, because the way this team used to be discussed was, man, this is my first time seeing the 49ers up front. They're just bigger than everybody else. Like there's no team in the league that is built the way that they're built. That's how people used to talk about the Niners. And now it's like, well, yeah, this team seems selfish. This team seems to act like they've won a Super Bowl, even though they haven't. That's, those are things that were said by Edelman. This team seems emotionally drained. So, this is not what we're used to hearing. Will it matter? Maybe not, but it is something to pay attention to, I think.
Sure. And I think Manti Te'o's conclusion might be right. I don't,
Mhm.
I don't think it's because of the reason that he said, right? So
For
to
sure.
me, I think it's more the tumultuous offseason, not having, like you mentioned, not just two of your best players, but two of your leaders on the field that impact the energy of the team in a very big way. And yeah, and once again, I think it's shocking, right? I don't think people thought Trent Williams was going to hold out, or and I don't think people thought that Brandon Ayuk would take this long to get done. So I think that's another that's another impact is you just didn't expect this to be happening so close to the season starting.